The lecture hall fell silent as instructor Vexlar activated the holographic display. The three-dimensional representation of a DNA helix rotated slowly in the air, its base pairs glowing in soft blues and greens. Around the amphitheater, students from 17 different species leaned forward, their various sensory organs focused on the display. Vexlar, a chronothy with scales that shimmered like oil on water, gestured with one of his forearms. Today, we examine the genetic code of species classified as sentient under Galactic Council regulations. Each of you will analyze your own species' genome. Scotty sat near the back, her auburn hair tied in a practical ponytail, data pad resting on her lap. Beside her, Coulson stretched his long legs into the aisle, his expression one of casual interest. They were the only two humans in the advanced xenobiology course at the Kepler Station University, and after 3 months, they'd grown accustomed to being specimens of curiosity. The genetic code, Vexlar continued, is the fundamental blueprint of any biological entity. It reveals evolutionary history, adaptation markers, and genetic purity. He emphasized the last 2 words with what the translation matrix rendered as pride. The hologram shifted, displaying the genome of a chronothy. Observe: 97% functional genes, 2% regulatory sequences, 1% non-coding remnants. This is typical of most advanced species. Another genome appeared, this one belonging to a thescian, one of the insectoid species in the front row. Similar patterns. Efficiency, purity, evolution refined. Scotty felt Coulson shift beside her as more examples flashed across the display. The Yul then, 96% functional. The Porothy, 95% functional. The pattern was consistent across every species shown. Then Vexlar's eyes, all 3 of them, settled on the 2 humans. And now, let us examine our newest council members. Humanity. His tone carried something Scotty couldn't quite identify. Curiosity? Condescension? The human genome materialized in the air, significantly larger than the previous displays. Scotty heard several gasps from around the room. Fascinating, Vexlar murmured. Only 42% functional genes. The rest. He zoomed into sections of the helix. Appears to be what we call junk DNA. Evolutionary debris. Quite unusual for a spacefaring species. Laughter rippled through some of the students. A chronothy near the front, Zelmoth, who'd made it clear he considered humans primitive, clicked his mandibles in amusement. Scotty felt heat rising in her cheeks, but she remained quiet, analyzing the data on her pad. Coulson, however, leaned forward, his blue eyes narrowing as he studied the hologram. There's more, Vexlar continued, clearly enjoying his lecture. Approximately 8% of human DNA appears to be retroviral in origin, ancient viral infections that somehow became incorporated into their genome. He turned to face Scotty and Coulson directly. Your species carries the genetic scars of countless viral plagues. It's remarkable you survived long enough to develop space travel at all. More laughter. Zelmoth turned in his seat, his scales rippling with mirth. Perhaps explains much about human behavior, yes? Contaminated from the start. Scotty's hand tightened on her data pad, but Coulson spoke before she could. Instructor Vexlar, his voice was calm, almost conversational. You said this 8% comes from viruses we survived? The laughter died down. Vexlar's primary eye focused on Coulson. Correct. Endogenous retroviruses. Genetic fossils of infections your ancestors endured. Survived. Coulson repeated, standing up. His height, over 6 feet, made several nearby students lean back. Not endured. Survived. Conquered, actually. The terminology is irrelevant, Vexlar said dismissively. The point is that your genome is contaminated. Coulson walked down the steps toward the hologram, Scotty close behind. She knew that look on his face, the same one he wore when solving impossible equations in quantum mechanics class. Instructor, how many viral pandemics has Cronath faced in its recorded history? Coulson asked. The Vexlar's scales rippled with what the translator interpreted as confusion. Viral pandemics? 3, perhaps 4. We developed immunity protocols quickly. Genetic purity is paramount to our survival. And the Thescians? A Thescian student spoke up, her mandibles clicking. 2 major outbreaks. Both contained within cycles through genetic modification and quarantine. Scotty was beginning to understand where Coulson was going. She pulled up data on her pad, her fingers flying across the interface. Humans, Coulson said, stopping beside the hologram, have faced approximately 15 major pandemics in the last 700 years alone. The Black Death, smallpox, Spanish flu, HIV, COVID-19, Ebola, Marburg, and dozens more before recorded history. He gestured at the glowing DNA. We didn't just survive them, instructor. We absorbed them. We made them part of us. Vexlar's scales shifted to a darker hue. That is, survivable, yes, but inefficient. Genetic modification would have taken time we didn't have, Scotty interjected, stepping forward with her data pad. Instructor, may I share my findings? Vexlar gestured permission, and Scotty transmitted her data to the main display. This 8% you call contamination, she began, her voice steady despite her racing heart, isn't inactive junk. Recent human research shows that some of these endogenous retroviruses regulate our immune system. Others control embryonic development. This sequence here, she highlighted a section, appears to protect against certain neural diseases. This one enhances our ability to respond to novel pathogens. She zoomed in further. We didn't just survive these viruses, instructor. We weaponized them, turned our enemies into armor. The lecture hall had gone completely silent. Coulson picked up the thread. You mentioned genetic purity is paramount to Chronothy survival. Can you explain why the Chronothy colony on Prixis 7 was completely wiped out by a fungal infection last year? A fungal infection that human colonists on the same planet barely noticed? Vexlar's scales flashed with what the translator couldn't interpret. Anger? Embarrassment. That was an isolated incident involving, or why, Scotty continued, pulling up more data. Thetian immune systems require constant genetic updates to handle new pathogens, while humans can adapt within a single generation. Or why the Yul then won't colonize any world with active viral ecosystems, while humans have settled on 43 such worlds with minimal genetic modification. She met Vexlar's three eyes steadily. You call our genome contaminated. We call it battle-tested. Every virus in our DNA is a war we won. Every scar is a trophy. Coulson crossed his arms. 8% of our genome is viral. That means 8% of what makes us human came from things that tried to kill us and failed. We're not contaminated, instructor. We're evolved, battle-forged. We're survivors at the genetic level. The silence stretched for a long moment. Then, from the front row, a Porthai student, a species known for their logical thinking, spoke up. The human argument has merit. Their genetic diversity and pathogen resistance are documented. Perhaps we have been analyzing this incorrectly. Zelmoth turned away, his scales darkening with what might have been shame or anger. Vexlar stared at the rotating human genome for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his tone had changed entirely. I may have been premature in my assessment. The human genome deserves further study, not dismissal. He looked at Scotty and Coulson with newfound respect. Perhaps what appears as weakness on the surface is actually remarkable strength. As Scotty and Coulson returned to their seats, whispers filled the auditorium. The human genome still rotated in the air, but now the students looked at it differently. Not as contaminated code, but as a testament to survival. 8%, Coulson whispered to Scotty with a slight smile. Not bad for genetic scars. Scotty grinned back. Humanity, fuck yeah. Behind them, the galaxy's newest members had just taught an important lesson. Sometimes, carrying your scars doesn't make you weak. Sometimes, it makes you indestructible.